welcome everyone around the country. Don't know what temperature it is there in Brisbane, but I'm sure it's warmer than here in Perth because it's 7 degrees. Hey, Rob.
Yeah. Pretty chilly, 17, I think.
Yeah. So we opened this invite up to our chapter leaders, our diploma students, and we have also the benefit of having the CEO of Australian Counselling Association here, Philip Armstrong. So thanks, Philip, for joining us. The purpose of today was really because we have Peter Nisbet, one of our members, who's doing a Certificate 4 in mental health peer support. And that's why Liz is here. She's representing the Queensland TAFE, who he's studying through, and he's about to do a vocational placement with us. And so the purpose of this opportunity, I guess, and that's why we're recording it, is for us to say, what is this Cert 4? And Peter's going to talk through that with the help of Liz. And we will look at that as an organisation to say, is that what we want all our chapter leaders and mentors to have? Is that something that the people who are doing diploma in counselling, how do they fit into that? Do they need some of those skills, or how does that work? And I guess also to talk about what is Peter's placement going to look like for us. He has to do 80 hours with our organisation, and what is that going to entail, and what is that going to look like? And I guess from the perspective of Buddy Up Australia, as we know, we're very much about that wellness end of a continuum. When we talk about being well to unwell, we all move along that continuum in our life span, both physically and mentally, and sometimes it's a short time we spend down in the unwell zone, and sometimes it's longer. And we're, I guess, at Buddy Up Australia, focusing on the well zone, trying to prevent people and provide early intervention so they don't get into the unwell zone. And so we need to have the skills equipped to be able to do that analysis, that first line of defence, I guess, to be able to say, oh, I think there's something a bit different about this person, and maybe they need some more support. And I can't maybe provide that, but I know where to go. And I know the initial conversations I need to have. So one of those things was the mental health first aid that we've been doing. Another one is to equip some of our people into the diploma in counselling, which we were gifted last year. And so this is now another piece of that puzzle that we're looking at. So that's all I'll say. I don't know that anyone else is going to come on board. So Peter, over to you. And Liz, do you want to sort of, I don't know if you got a chance to say who you were.
Look, I'm here as both Peter's mentor and also as a student of Philip's and a member of the ACA. So I was a teacher for many years and experienced my own sort of trauma and distress in the field, and as a result got interested in mental health, and I've now studied to register as a counsellor. So yes, Peter's training through TAFE is very much how we, with lived experience, can use that in the service and the assistance of others without it being about us. So if you like, it's very much about how we selectively share aspects of our experience in the furtherance of the well-being of others.
Yeah. Right.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, so I'll kick off. I have a presentation to share, so I'll share my screen instead of seeing just my video and this lovely T-shirt. I'll try to not to make this too grim, even though it's sometimes a grim subject, mental health. Yeah, let's just see how it goes. There'll be plenty of time for questions and answers later, and obviously I'll be presenting this as if other people will be watching it later, who might not have had the chance to join us today. So let me just share screen. Is that coming through okay on the presentation?
Yeah.
Great. This is the title screen, obviously, that we're doing of the presentation. This briefing today is on my vocational placement with Buddy Up Australia. that's a picture of me in the bush yesterday wearing this t-shirt, going for a hike, and very much doing the twin goals of Buddy Up Australia with a veteran friend of mine just yesterday afternoon in the beautiful Mount Cootha, where we were hiking together and yeah, enjoying the beautiful nature and the mental health and wellbeing benefits that come from spending time with friends as well as hiking in the beautiful outdoors. Obviously, I'm a new member, I guess, of Buddy Up Australia since March 2020, and pretty bad timing to join with the cancellation of all the in-person events, but I've attended a fair few of the online events at the moment, yeah, and trying to get to more and more of the in-person events. So what I'll cover today is introductions, which we've already done, my story and my lived experience, which is in even more detail of my introduction, the program of works, as we're calling it, the stuff that I'm going to be doing, and the certificate for mental health peer work in detail, and then a question and answer session. Just bear with me for a second because I've sort of lost my mouse cursor. So I just want to minimize, in case it affects the recording, minimize the shared video. Let's go back to that. There we go. That might be better. So my story. This is some pictures of me, both from when I was 18 years old and just last year when I was 40 years old. So you can see the time span and the effects of time there. Yeah, so I'm a veteran of 5 years in the Australian Army from 1998 to 2003. I joined when I was 5 years old after a family history of military service for quite a few generations now. My great grand uncle, so my grandfather's uncle, was a member of the New Zealand Expeditionary Force that went to Gallipoli and passed away at Gallipoli in the Anzac legend, as we call it now. Both my grandparents both served in World War II, one in the Air Force and one as a driver with the medical corps in the Army, and then my father joined as a full-time member of the Citizens Militia Force with what was then the Commando Regiment in Sydney, but he didn't, during the Vietnam War I should say, but didn't actually deploy to Vietnam War. Yeah, so I guess I joined when I was 18, straight out of high school. I went to the Australian Defence Force Academy, did my training and university degree there from 1998 to 2000, graduated from there and I went to the Royal Military College, Duntroon, where I did 18 months of training for my joys, and instead of 12 months of training as most people who come from the academy do. And at the end of the 18 months training, I didn't then graduate from the Royal Military College, Duntroon, because I'd damaged my hearing firing a anti-tank weapon back during the academy days, and it had an effect on my ability to graduate. That's a much longer story. I'm quite happy to share that in person if people really want to go into the details of it. But in essence, that's the story as it is at the moment. So I then spent another 6 months trying to appeal that decision whilst within the Army and trying to stay within, because it was the career that I had my goals set on for quite some time. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. So I transitioned from the Army in 2003 straight into public service. I joined the ACT government, as can be seen on the slide there, in 2003. Pretty much engineered my own transition from the military before there was anything like a transition programs as there are now, and then went straight into work in the public service using my arts degree in politics that I'd gained from the Australian Defence Force Academy to go straight into policy and project management sort of work with the ACT government. I also managed to get myself into a graduate program, as it was called then. So in 2003, I actually completed my Diploma of Government Vocational Qualification Training whilst getting paid to work for the ACT government. So it's not the first time that I've done a vocational placement in my life like this. This is certainly, something that it feels very familiar from back then in 2003. And as can be seen, my career to date has mostly been in the public service in various governments, including a long time here in the Queensland government from 2006 to 2011, which included also doing some significant work for the 2011 Queensland floods and the Cyclone Yasi in far north Queensland, in doing some disaster recovery work and community engagement post those disasters. So I spent a bit of time doing a couple of other things, including working in Northern Territory, in Darwin, and then since 2014 I've been back here in Brisbane and spending a fair bit of my time mostly volunteering. Of note to Buddy Up Australia, as well as I guess I have some crossover with the first responders community in regards to that I'm a volunteer member of the Red Cross Emergency Services Queensland team, including completing their psychological first aid training course more than a couple of times now, which is only a one-day course, but it's a great course to sort of help people with the impacts of traumas. And I also then deployed to the field to help people as a member of the Australian Red Cross Emergency Services in the Canungra area after the September 2019 fires last year. I've also completed the mental health first aid training course, did that in 2019 through Open Arms here in Brisbane, which was actually quite great networking opportunity and meeting other people as well. That picture there is me with some of the Veteran Sport Australia Invictus Games athletes at the 2019 Australian Indoor Rowing Championship event that was held here in Brisbane last year. It's actually quite interesting because the two people wearing the green and yellow t-shirts are like more contemporary veterans like us, and then this 90-year-old guy in the middle is actually a Korean War veteran who was competing, literally the only person competing in his age group, for the Australian Indoor Rowing Championships. But it just shows you, again, the span of veterans across the ages. My lived experience. So this is a picture of me again, just recently in what I call one of my favourite shirts, which I'd normally be wearing when I'm doing this sort of work. In a sec, chat. Okay, no worries. How do I get rid of that? There we go. As a veteran of 5 years service in the Army, I definitely identify with being a veteran with lived experience in mental health issues. And this includes the accepted condition of right-sided sensorineural hearing loss and tinnitus since 1999. And so, I've been basically living with this for the last 21 years now. It wasn't until 2017 I fit within the cohort of veterans who don't really do much or do a lot about their mental health or even other injuries for some time. For whatever reason, once I left the military, I just tried to put that behind me and didn't really do anything in regards to treatment or any sort of actual, like help until 2017, when, as it says there, it was the catalyst for change for me. The federal government brought in the new policy, which is now called the Non-Liability Healthcare Arrangements for Mental Health, or the White Card Arrangements, as a lot of people know about them. And so it was the ability for me to actually then get help. And so I've been using that since then, engaging an independent clinical psychologist, so not through Open Arms, my own one, but that is then sort of that's paid for by DVA through the White Card Arrangements, as well as ongoing exercise physiology for mental health, which is quite good, and other necessary mental health services, including I have engaged with Open Arms in regards to my own experience, in as much as I've been engaging with their group programs and their group education programs, like Understanding Anxiety, or even attended one of their Understanding Pain group sessions in order to understand the similarities between the tinnitus effect that I have and what other people experience with chronic pain as well. But yeah, so as I say there, I'm still moving along my recovery journey, and I think that's what makes it both interesting and challenging work to work in this area. Onto the program of works. So the 5 things that so far that we've negotiated, and I say so far in as much as it sounds like things keep getting added onto the list, which is great. But the main things that we're focusing on in regards to my placement with Buddy Up Australia is these 5 things. So the first one being peer support, Zoom one-on-one sessions with chapter mentors, which will be recorded for supervision purposes, obviously with negotiation with the individual member or mentor, and that'll be sort of like a scheduled reach out session, and then this stage there could be at least definitely one per chapter mentor, but probably more than one. I probably ideally would think that 2 to 3 sessions would be a good number. But that's still yet to be decided, I guess, based on the individual and and what comes up in those sessions, I guess. The second thing is peer support Zoom group sessions with the Diploma of Counselling students, so that we can have a bit more of a group chat, a bit more informal than a presentation like this, and just a bit more of a check-in on how all of those students are going with the Diploma of Counselling. And if I can provide any peer support in that way. The third thing is face-to-face peer support with members at Buddy Up Australia events. I've put in brackets in Southeast Queensland, all online. I'm not sure if we just discussed about attending online previously, Megan, but I just thought about it over the weekend. I was like, oh yeah, I could probably attend them online as well and then talk to them. I say ad hoc and targeted support. What I mean by that is that hopefully I'll be attending some of the events in person, and then just be able to one-on-one go up to the people who might need some extra support, or might just want to chat, or then alternatively, as I've spoken with Mark about, just talking to each of the chapter mentors and then figuring out if some person who is attending actually does need extra support on the day or at that point in time, and then obviously that's what I mean by targeted. So the fourth thing there is peer support, phone check-in with members who don't turn up to events as recommended by chapter mentors, what I call member reach out. So we've already had a few initial discussions, myself and Megan and Mark and I, about some members here in the Brisbane chapter, and potentially that's the same in other chapters of Buddy Up Australia as well, that there are some people that, as Megan said, needs more support along moving from the unwell to the well spectrum, and seeing what we can do to help there. And the fifth thing at the moment is mental health training for our team. So professional boundaries, values, advocacy. They're just a couple of examples of things that I could do presentations for like this on some of the content that I'm both learning, as well as that I've already learned in previous experiences, and with the help of especially people like Liz and Philip. So the Cert 4 in mental health peer work. What is it? Well, it's a certificate 4-level qualification that is new in this space, and it's specifically designed for people who have lived experience of mental health, mental illness. This course allows you to aid people in the journey of recovery in what we call the recovery framework. Learn how to guide and provide advice to aid people in their own recovery, and it is designed for people who want to volunteer or work within the mental health sector. So that's exactly why I'm here at the moment. Liz, did you want to take over and talk some more here about the certificate?
Just a couple of quick things. Something that came to my mind was that any of you who have experience with people in a counselling space might be thinking to yourself, that sounds a bit like peer counselling. I suppose in some ways that is what peer work is, what it is. But rather than it being about identifying issues and assisting someone to work through those issues, it's far more about holding space and listening for someone, allowing those resolutions to their own set of issues to come from them. There isn't so much the, I think that if we worked on this together, sense that you might get from a therapist. There's a lot more, you know, well, I can have a sense of what it is that's happening for you because of my own experience. I also know what worked for me, but that may not necessarily work for you, but I'm happy to talk about it. Okay, and peer workers are specifically trained to know their own limitations. So when we're getting into the realms of this person actually needs some assistance from a mental health professional, we would likely say to them, Peter, you know, I'm enjoying our conversation, but I can't help but think that there might be somebody better suited to working with you on this. Would you like some help from me to find that person? Okay, so where you stop being a buddy and sense that there's a greater need, it's very much about gently referring on that person rather than taking on that responsibility.
Thanks, Liz. Did you want to add something about how you see from outside the community how beneficial this model is to the veteran and first responder community for mental health and wellbeing too?
Look, absolutely. The essence of peer work is that you have the opportunity to talk to somebody who gets where you are. So if I'm talking to somebody who has problems that are based in alcohol and other drugs, it's possible for them to work with a peer worker with similar background and experience. The framework that Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous was built on is very much the peer work model. But as Peter said, this is quite new in terms of it being a qualification, with the first qualifications issued in this area in 2015. And it's now being offered by TAFE Queensland, which is the provider of choice for the mental health community sector in Queensland. And so far the Gold Coast has 6 graduates as of about a week ago. So it's that new. And each of them's heading to work in areas that suit them, fit them. And as you can see, Peter needing a space to do placement and finding that there were organisations specifically for people who share that experience of having service and that being integral to the lived experience, it makes sense for that peer-to-peer interaction where there's enough of a lived experience that's shared to make the process work more smoothly.
Yeah. The two things just 2 other things I would add there about the Cert for and mental health peer work and the reason why I chose it as a qualification to do right now. Numerous people in the past have, I guess, told me before that I would probably make a good counsellor or a good psychologist, but I'm also not as well. Firstly, I'm not as able to willing to go back to university right at the moment to do a psychology degree, and all of the then clinical placement that comes with actually that path. But diploma of counselling and becoming a counsellor is not something that I've closed off as an option. It's just I decided to go with this option first, and partly it was driven by my desire to help veterans in their mental health and well-being in particular, because yeah, it was early last year that this started to get offered as a thing for veterans in regards to Open Arms. Counselling service has also brought on their own community and peer advisors, they're called, in a paid role. And that was the very first time that I'd seen the certificate for mental health peer work. I saw that job advertised, thought I could do it. And one of the selection criteria was the ability and willingness to undertake this training course as well. So I applied for that job. I wasn't successful. They had thousands of veterans apply, which is good, but it started off then my interest in this area. And so that's why I'm then now have come to Buddy Up Australia as well with Megan to then be part of the placement here and see if we can make this as more of a wider thing than just Open Arms, community and peer advisors.
Peter, Rob had an interesting question about the difference between a certificate for in mental health and the certificate for in mental health peer work. And Rob, you actually talked about, say, peer support. When the difference between peer support and peer work is that one's voluntary and one's employed. That's the essential difference between peer support and peer work. So the Cert for Mental Health Peer Work specifically trains the people who do that course in how they might use their own lived experience to be that rapport builder and connection maker with others. And the certificate for mental health is very much, this is what mental health looks like. So if you like, the peer work qualification says to you, and if I could add, it's both for people with a lived experience themselves or for carers. So it could actually be studied by somebody who's cared for a person experiencing distress. And then both the carer and the consumer peer workers operate within multidisciplinary teams in organisations like the government health departments. And they provide support for people. Quite often when people present at accident and emergency in extreme distress or psychosis, their capacity to communicate what it is that they need is diminished. And often a peer worker can step in there and be both a de-escalator and a communicator, so it bridges the service user and the system.
Thanks, Liz. That's a good explanation. I think as well, I always forget about the consumer and carer difference with the Cert for mental health peer work as well, because whilst I have a lot of empathy for and understanding of people who are carers for people who have living with mental illness or mental health issues, my experience is my lived experience of as a consumer of mental health services now since relatively not that long, since 2017. But in essence has been a long time just without any help, and potentially also we could go into the whole discussions about what I did do as coping strategies over those 21 years. But the carer element is quite as important, and that's why I also see particularly the relevance of the model to Buddy Up Australia and to potentially to the chapter leaders as both, those that are consumers and have their own lived experience with mental health issues, or can be seen as carers in regards to looking after our members as well.
Can I just add that for our environment, carers would be immediate family members, and that's why they're a big part of our demographic of who we're, I guess, not targeting, but including, you know, in our organisation. So the term you use, carer, we would say immediate family member, because they have a lived experience of someone in their household that may have, and then that's really impacted on them. So I just wanted to clarify that language.
Yeah, definitely. I might just go back to my presentation and share the screen again. Hang on a sec. I'm almost finished. So where were we? Play. Oh yeah, it's a question and answer slide. And a picture of me doing some sporting activity in what I call my other passion and outlet, which is my Spartan racing, which is all on hold now thanks to the pandemic. Yeah, that was from last year. One of my other outlets that I do, as well as hiking and other things. So I do have more slides to come back to, but we might just escape from there and just go to Q&A. Yeah, so does anyone have any other questions? You can unmute yourself and ask one by one.
Peter, I just want to say that was a shameless display of testosterone that we just saw.
Love it.
Megan, something occurred to me when you were talking about carers, because your membership, we're talking about adults over 18 to serve. The interesting thing is that there are many people who have their own experience, but for whatever reason, they have an interest in helping adolescents or young children. And we're finding increasing demand. I'm sure that it's the same all over Australia. We're seeing young children 8, 9, 10 years of age presenting with quite serious anxiety conditions. And there's a need almost for a child whisperer to be available through the child youth mental health services and provide information for families about what their experience, what they can expect, as well as being able to provide the comfort to the young person who's going through distress. And we often find that our graduates fit that carer role there.
Okay, that's good. We link with an organisation which is based in Brisbane called the White Bear Foundation, and they're very much focused on children. You know them? You know, Maria Barker? Yeah, so she's one of our members. Her son was at ADFA, Australian Defence Force Academy. I think he graduated, but then he took his life. So she's very passionate about, you know, obviously the mental health of children, increasing their leadership, and so we work closely with her. So I guess it's, you know, I don't know what the equivalent is in other states, but we're doing, in Perth, we've got a mentoring with primary school kids volunteering program. So it's called 12 Buckets. So wherever possible, we're trying to get our members to link into those organisations that already exist and who have much better capability in that area. So yeah, definitely support that need. Absolutely. Yeah. Where we can.
Yeah, just to add to that, Liz, on Buddy Up side, we've already brought that up within our chapter in Queensland for an example. Just what Marie does with the resilience training that she provides for the kids is something that I thought we could really try to contribute towards. And we've discussed trying to roll out, similar to what Megan's doing in WA, just facilitating some sort of mentoring program, because I think everyone's got their experiences that can assist, and we've just got to walk away from, well, not walk away, but just see the bigger picture and know that, okay, it not only affects individuals, families, children, because we're seeing that evidence is showing now that children can experience mental health issues related to what their parents. So that predisposition is obviously being shown there, and it's been recorded and proven. So I think we've got to be aware of that and have a look at roles that we could positively contribute as well. So
you're so right, Mark. And as Peter explained, his being drawn to volunteering, the same thing happened for me when I left teaching, very much being drawn to opportunities to work with young people in particular, because they were who I knew how to talk to. And it was through that giving back that I stopped focusing on what was going on for me and started realising that I could actually help. And you go from feeling as if you're a burden to feeling as if you're an asset. And we'd all of us much prefer to be feeling like we've got something worthwhile to share.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, Mark, just for your knowledge, there was some significant research undertaken with Vietnam veterans and generational trauma, and they 3 generations, and it actually got worse with the second, not the first, but the second generation, suicide and depression rates were higher.
Mm. So
we can imagine the impact that we have no awareness of the first and second war.
Yeah, it's I think that awareness itself, because you sort of think, okay, well, what possibly has a child been exposed to, that, and you just think, oh, what's current, but what are they predisposed to? You know what I mean? And that generation, that I guess the illnesses present themselves later on is a big factor, and it's like I only just read something on it recently, and it just really blew me away. So.
Just think about particularly the white Australian whose family goes back to Anzac, goes back to Gallipoli and the First World War. Most of those families would have had family members in the Second World War as well, followed then possibly by Vietnam, Korea. So there are potentially families in Australia that have been traumatised for well over 100 years.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm.
Interestingly, I just met up with the local mayor here. She's English, and her father served in British Army, and I'd say, you know, Northern Ireland, but, you know, whatever, didn't actually go into that detail, but she would have been in her mid-50s, and so her father, you know, in the 80s. And she said when she used to wake him up, she'd wake him and then stand back because she knew that, you know, and so now with her kids, she says, oh, go and wake up Pop, but remember, don't, you know, like touch him and then walk away, you know. So she briefs the grandchildren about how to wake her dad, because even that, just the way he could potentially take them out from just being woken up. So yeah, you know, there's all those sorts of things, but, and they're just small things, and they laugh about it, but actually, you know, that's, yeah, it's just those small things that become bigger, you know.
Mm.
So my question though for this is recognition of prior learning. So for our current operators, what can they do to get recognition of prior learning? And that might be a little question for Liz, I'm not sure, but what can they do?
Just in following up from a question that Rob had, he said there must be significant overlap between the Certificate 4 in Mental Health and the peer work study. And I've indicated that, yes, all but 4 units appear in other qualifications and are quite easy to do recognition of prior learning for. The 4 units that we have difficulty achieving that for are the specific peer work units, for the most part because very few people have been a worker in that space. We've all done lots of volunteer work in that space, but there's this stumbling block. Megan, I wonder, do your chapter mentors have anything like a position description for what they do?
We have a really basic one. So it's not, and it doesn't, it's like most organisations, doesn't cover everything they do. So yeah.
Because I wonder if we could have a look at that and use that as the evidence that indicates that the specific work of peer-to-peer has been done. And with a little bit of top-up training, I don't think there'd be a problem at all.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we had to go through that process when we were trying to get wage for the guy down in Tassie, but I laugh because Mark probably hasn't seen it. So you just made me realise that I haven't sent it out to him.
Something that you may or may not be aware of is that the NDIS has, as at the 1st of July, introduced another category that people with psychosocial support packages can utilise, and it's called Recovery Coach. And it's specifically designed for people with peer work experience.
Okay.
So we believe that this is actually the NDIS's way of saying we no longer want disability support workers employed in the support of people with psychosocial difficulties. We want them to be supported by people who've worn the stripes and have the experience to offer the support.
Good call.
Yeah, you might want to look a little bit with that. It might be better as an organisation to get registered. I'll have to talk to Elliot, my industry liaison, about that, because the NDIS sounds simple, but actually you have to get audits, which cost thousands of dollars before you can register for NDIS contracts as an individual or organisation. So it's becoming, NDIS are broadening the ability for people to work within it for the packages, but they've made it a lot harder for people to get in to work with those packages, because the system was being, people were misusing the system because it actually pays pretty well. So people use it as a part-time work, particularly people who don't work full-time. So this would probably be something that would be really good for Peter and people like that to look at, just to get a little bit of income without having to work full-time. But the auditing process might be what is the obstacle that puts everyone off, because you have to be audited by them, and it's a very expensive and bureaucratic process. So I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure the Buddy Up might be able to, but I'll have a look into that for you.
And Philip, if you could, I know that for counsellors, our membership, our association membership is all that's required, so that we don't have to register.
That used to be the case. NDIA, which has been rolled out now, has changed the rules. I hate to say it, but the bean counters in Canberra have realised that NDIS can make a lot of money by making everybody go through the audit. And so they're now changing the policy. So I think it's by the end of next year, everybody must have been audited. So we do have a period of grace. And that was because we had it written into legislation that ACA members could automatically go into it. But the NDIA takes over from NDIS. And unfortunately, the bean counters have cottoned onto a little way of making some money. So that's going to be...
Yeah. It's a shame. I'd hoped that there may have even been the possibility of an associate membership or something for people with a qualification at that level that might have let them in. But as you've just explained, that's no longer possible anyway.
No, look, it's everywhere is, it's a strange one. Everywhere is becoming broader in allowing people access, but becoming a lot stricter in people getting the ability to go through processes to get in. So it's actually, even though on the face value, it's broadening access, it's actually restricting access.
On the RPL, thanks for sharing, Philip. On the RPL issue, the question, Megan, I was just going to also add that one of the things that I've been thinking all along since joining Buddy Up Australia is very much how the model can be, can be brought to Buddy Up Australia, and in some ways, hopefully, my vocational placement is the, I guess, learning whilst doing of how we can actually get all this going. Mark and I caught up yesterday, and we had a bit of a discussion about this as well. And I honestly think that a lot of the work that the chapter mentors are probably doing right now is actually exactly the same. But there's also the capacity issue in terms of how much they can do. And even just here in the Brisbane chapter with 50 members, if there's more than one that requires a bit more help, then that's suddenly a lot more hours on top of everything else that the chapter mentor is doing. So maybe there's both roles for a chapter mentor being qualified in this area, but also then having within each chapter someone who is a volunteer peer support person too, who can help provide that. And if this qualification is something that is interests other veterans, then there's opportunity to then also come and do more vocational placement time with Buddy Up Australia. The other two things I was going to quickly add that I know from my own knowledge, and Liz can speak to one of them, is that I'm doing this qualification, this Cert 4 in mental health peer work here in Queensland at a subsidised rate, thanks to the Queensland government. And the thing that got me the subsidised rate, and when I mean subsidised rate, it cost me $400 instead of $4,000, is that the only thing that got me that subsidised rate was the fact that I've got a white card from DVA, and that entitled me to a veteran's concession price. So that is quite a good thing, I think. And if other veterans are also fit in that category and are interested, then that would be good to take up that opportunity. And then also at the same time here in Queensland, which is a thing that Liz can speak to, is that the Queensland government has funded through their pandemic response a mental health peer work skill set, they call it, which is some of the units from the Cert 4, but not all of the units. Liz, did you want to speak a bit more about that?
Yeah, look, that's free training that's available to everyone. It's 3 units. 2 of them are the specific peer work units. But just on the previous point, and Megan, I'm happy to send you detailed information of both the course and the skill set. But TAFE regularly does corporate offerings to an organisation. It used to be based on, when I was with the Salvation Army, there were 10 of us wanted to do our Certificate 4 in mental health, and it cost us $80 each. So you take advantage of the funding that Peter's talking about, which is the higher level skills funding available in Queensland, and corporate packaging, particularly given that the people, your chapter mentors in particular, have quite a lot of prospect for recognition of prior learning. So there are a number of different ways that we could look at putting something together to offer to your members. And I believe that South Australian, there's a TAFE there that offers it as well. I'm not sure about the West, but Megan, it wouldn't surprise me. I think the West is actually further advanced than some of the eastern states when it comes to mental health peer work.
Mm. Yeah.
But one way or another, we can look at something for you if there's the interest there, and we can even do some face-to-face training.
Mm. Thanks, Liz. The only thing I was also going to add that I'm aware of from my networks as well at the moment is that the Victorian government, in response to the pandemic, has also now listed the Certificate 4 in mental health peer work to be a free training qualification through their response package down there. So more than just the skill set the Queensland government's done, but the entire Cert 4 in mental health peer work. There's eligibility criteria for that, which I'm not 100% sure of, but if Buddy Up members were eligible and they lived in Victoria, then that is a possibility through the Victorian government. I'm not sure which the provider is. I would hope it would be TAFE Victoria, but it might not be. It might be someone else. And in any regards, it's I guess only open to Victorians at the moment. So yeah, but I'm pretty sure there's also more we can do and discuss on that at a later time. I'm just conscious if anyone else had any of the time, and if anyone else had any questions, Katrina or Mark or Rob, do you have any other questions after listening to my presentation?
I'm actually pretty good when it comes to it, Pete, after our catch up yesterday. So anything else that I can think of over the next couple of days, I'm going to certainly get back to you, and maybe we can arrange a catch up again, mate. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
I'm good, thanks, Pete, but I really appreciate that, and appreciate the opportunity to ask the questions that I asked, so thank you very much.
No worries.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. It was a great overview of what you're doing, and happy to help you get up those hours, eh?
Megan?
Can I just say, because one of the things we talked about is that Peter's going to do the one-on-ones that's going to be videoed for supervision. So just to be really clear on that, he's going to have a conversation with you and whoever that person is to say, we don't have to video it, but we want to do it because obviously it helps with your supervision. But there'll be an opportunity for you to review that video and say yes or no, I do not want that shared. So if something comes up for you in that discussion with Peter and all of a sudden you go, I don't want that to be on a video, I don't need that to be shared with anyone, that's fine. And what you need to appreciate is I'm not going to watch every single, and neither is Liz, going to watch every single video in its entirety of his conversations with all of you. What will happen is that Liz and I, as providing supervision, will go in and do a sample check and look at how did he build rapport, how was he asking, holding space and asking questions, and how did he refer on, and so we'll be looking for certain things rather than looking at the content as such. So just know that that's where we're coming from when we're looking at that. And you have every right to say at the end of it, after it's been filmed, to say I just can't, I don't want that shared. That's okay. And it might be that you say, can you just not share that bit of this whole thing? And so that will be cut. Okay, so just be aware that we're not trying to expose anyone here. We're trying to get Peter his hours and get his qualification. Okay, so.
Okay. Thanks, Megan. I might just finish with the last slide I had on my presentation because I created it. I want to share it. So where to from here? So this recording will be uploaded to the cloud and distributed to those who couldn't make it today within the contact list of the chapter mentors, as well as the students, the Diploma of Counselling students and other Buddy Up members as relevant. My contact details and documents as needed will be provided to you all. And then we will start scheduling in times to contact each of the chapter mentors, especially one-on-ones, to begin sessions. There's no rush per se, but the sooner we can get, I guess, the first round of one-on-ones happening, the better it'll be to sort of get the lay of the land of where we want to be going with this. And further contact by email, especially for Diploma of Counselling students, for everyone else. And yeah, I'll see you in person at the Buddy Up events here in Southeast Queensland, or the online events too. And then I had one other slide that just says, thank you. So I'll stop sharing. And yeah, any last questions from anyone before we wrap up? Happy to.
Well, I don't know if you want it on the recording, Peter, but I wanted to ask Megan how she feels about Queensland becoming the AFL capital of Australia.
I love it. Yeah, no comments. Yeah.
Peter, just a quick one. Would learning any counselling skills, as opposed to not counselling qualifications, but would learning counselling skills, do you think that would help towards that qualification, people doing it?
I think, well, I've been told by Liz and a couple other people that I already have a high level of aptitude towards counselling skills without knowing what the definition of that actually is. So I probably come from a biased perspective that I probably might already have them and the ability to do them. And I think a lot of us veterans and first responders may also have a similar set of skills just from our training that we've done, in the military or with the emergency services. But I think the answer to is probably yes. But I think there's also then the line and the boundary issues about whether you then are a counsellor or whether you're a peer helping.
Yeah, now this is specifically counselling skills for people who don't want to be qualified counsellors. Having them would help them within the area that they work.
Yeah, well, yes, I think
absolutely, Philip.
Yeah.
And Philip, one of the advantages of me having a counselling background in teaching this course is they get taught counselling skills from day one.
Yeah.
By the time they get ready to do their first role play, they are quite good. Their micro skills are really good. they understand different questioning techniques, but I do absolutely think that they can never have access to enough. I'm doing some PD shortly for a group of peer workers on motivational interviewing.
Right. Okay. So the reason I ask is one of my companies has got a significant contract to deliver counselling skills training overseas. And to do that, we have developed 3 certificates, and each one has 5 units. And it's about counselling skills. It is absolutely not to qualify anybody as a counsellor, but we have designed and made it in Australia. So we have PDF slides and all the rest. So it's going to be going onto our Institute of Human Development website in a couple of weeks to be released. So I was thinking, Megan, I'll talk to the other directors of the company and I might be able to get that released to you guys for free. So anybody who's part of Buddy Up who'd just like to learn counselling skills at their own time, their own pace, it's online training for free. Particularly people like such yourself, Peter. If you think you can, if this can help you in any way whatsoever, or other people you're working with, so it's absolutely optional. But I'll talk to the directors and see if we can get a code going, and you guys can just access it free and set it within your own time. And if it's helpful, it is. If it's not, then fine.
Thank you, Philip. That's great. It'll be fantastic.
All right, that sounds excellent, actually. But even more stuff to do. As I said before, that those 5 things that we've listed on the program have worked, but Mark and I were just discussing yesterday some even more things that I could potentially be doing as part of this vocational placement. So yeah, it definitely would be good to keep going at it and seeing how it all goes. But yeah, if anyone doesn't have any other questions, then we might just finish up.
Sorry, Pete. I was just going to add to that, Phil. And Megs, I think it'd be a really good skill set to carry over into our area, because I know our charter's to keep everyone in the well zone, but 6 months ago, who would have thought we were in this situation we're in now globally? Yeah. So I think no matter what, you want to have contingencies, and if this is certainly one that supports what we can deliver, Phil, we'd bring it on, mate. Bring it on.
Yeah, I think the more skills we can have, so that we keep ourselves in the well zone, because when you're caring for others and looking after others, it's we've got to have that skill, but also just that so we don't feel out of our depth when it does start happening around us, that we know, right, just like we would treat someone with a first aid requirement, with a slashed wrist, or a physical injury, probably slashed wrist was a mental health issue as well as a physical, but you get what you get training in that, how to deal with it, and you feel very, I guess, qualified. But sometimes in that mental health space, people think, oh no, if I don't do the right thing, then, the worst could happen. Well, it's, the same thing could happen in the first aid realm. So mental health has got to be, we've got to look at it in the same way. What is our procedure? What do we need to do? How do I need to communicate? How do I need to listen? What do I have to ask? Where can I refer? All that sort of information. So anything we can do to upskill our team to do that, the better, And I guess what I'd like to see is that this is available to our members as well, because a member might be hiking with Mark down the back with someone else, and Mark doesn't know that, but this member's had the training and is next to, someone who's new and has a chat, and then all of a sudden they've got the skills to be able to go, hey, you know what? Let's talk about this. And, so yeah, so it's so much, like we should be sharing the load of this. This isn't something that we just have a couple of designated people. Obviously, we have a couple of designated people with the higher skills, but at the end of the day, the more we can provide this training out to the, the masses, the better, as far as I'm concerned, because it should be that everyone has the ability to recognise, this, the people around them, the people that love, that they live with, and so yeah. So thank you, Peter. Thank you, Liz, for your time. Philip, thank you for joining us as well. This, as Peter said, he'll make this available. We'll get the details from Liz about RPLing. we will get the details from Phil in terms of the extra courses available. He's going to look into the registration for NDIS as well, which would be great. I'm going to look at funding to see what we can basically offer and what other states are offering similar to Queensland TAFE, and see where that can go. And I guess Peter's going to really be one rolling out the program, you know, in terms of who he's connecting with, and I'll let him deal with that. And I'll just, between Liz and I, will be monitoring that process. So I think that's about it as in terms of my action list. Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks everyone for joining today. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Pete.
Speak soon.
Yeah.
I'll speak to you later, Megan, about